Okay, so hello friends. As we discussed in the last two tutorials about the basic MVC architecture and the Spring MVC architecture. So based on that Spring MVC architecture only, today we'll be creating a first Spring MVC web application. As you all know that in this Spring MVC architecture, the components involved are front controller, handler mapper, model class, view resolver and the view. So we'll be creating each component separately today. First, you all know how to create a dynamic web project in an Eclipse IDE. So we are using Eclipse IDE and have to create a one dynamic web project that I have created it with the name Spring MVC Project 1. You just have to go to this file, enter over here dynamic web project, just click on this and go to next. Here you have to specify the project name. I am not creating a new project because already one project is present with me. I'll just show you how you can create it. Type the name over here, your project name, that is Spring MVC project. It's saying that it's already existing, so you can give it another name, 123. Here is the location of your workspace. Now since it's a web project, so you need to run it on a server. So we are using Apache Tomcat version 8.5. You can choose a new runtime and specify the other server if you want to give. It's not Apache JBoss, whichever you want to. I'm using Apache Tomcat version. Go to next. It will be creating your all the classes which are being built in the build classes folder. Then again go to next. Here you have to click on this generate web.xml deployment descriptor, because by default all the web projects have this file only, because when user hits a URL, the first time the request goes to web.xml only. So this you have to click and then just finish. So this will give you a it will show you a dialog box showing that this is associated with Java EE, because it's an enterprise edition perspective. Click on EX and you will be getting your first dynamic web project. Fine, then here it's a server. You have to just do a right click new server and provide the folder where your server is being installed. This is your Apache version 8.5. Give the installation directory of Apache Tomcat over here and just click on finish. So this way we have I created the two, so you can just delete the another one if you want to, because I already have one. Similarly, this is the directory structure of your dynamic web project. In the web content web inf folder, you are having your web.xml file. This is all the welcome files which it will be showing, and here in Java resources you will be creating your classes, whatever you want to create it. Okay, so let's delete this project because we're already having the one. So now we are clear with the installation, the creation of a Spring MVC dynamic web project and how to integrate it with a server. Next, now for the setup of the Spring MVC dynamic web project, you need the Spring MVC jar files. I have already downloaded the Spring MVC jar files and put it in my web inf lib folder. We are using the Spring 4.0.4.4 distribution files, so all those jar files it will be copied over here. So this Spring jar files you have to put it. This is just a setup of the Spring MVC web project. Apart from these jar files of Spring, you have to put Apache Commons logging jar also, which is used for logging purposes. After this is done, we have completed the installation or the creation of the Spring MVC project. Okay, now let's start the creation of the application. Okay, as you all know, whenever a user hits a URL, the first time request goes to web.xml. As I showed you, this web.xml was blank. It was having only the welcome files. Now when the request is coming to this web.xml, it is looking for the servlet that will handle my request. But since we are not using the servlet technology and we are using Spring MVC technology, so we need to tell this to web.xml that the incoming URL request will now be handled by the Spring MVC and not the servlet. For that, we have to put this piece of code. This tell the web.xml, that incoming request URL will be handled by the SpringMVC front controller. So let me explain it to you. We have a servlet. This is a servlet name. This you can give it any. I have given it a Spring Dispatcher. This is a servlet class. org.springframework.web.servlet.dispatcher servlet. This is my front controller which I was telling you in the architecture. You remember? Okay. So this dispatcher servlet is the front controller of SpringMVC application. So after we have mapped the servlet, that now the servlet is what? My front controller, that is dispatcher servlet. Now I need to do the servlet mapping. This is the servlet name, which is same as the one you gave it above, and this is my URL pattern. I have given it just the /. This means that all the incoming URLs, you can just specify the one also, that all the URLs with the this which matches exactly with that, but I have not done that. I have said all the incoming URLs, they should be handled by dispatcher servlet or the front controller of SpringMVC application. Now after this is done, first step is to modify this web.xml to tell that the incoming URLs are handled by the SpringMVC front controller. After this, the second component you have to add is the Spring Dispatcher servlet.xml. This XML file you have to create it. Just go to this SpringMVC project, right click on it, new, go to other, just enter XML. So you have an XML file. I will not be creating it, I am just showing it for your purpose. In the SpringMVC project, you have to give the name over here. So what will be this name? This name you have to take care of. This is same as the servlet name which you gave, that is Spring Dispatcher -servlet. This is the syntax which we use to define this XML file. So since we are having already one, so I'll just cancel it. So after this XML file is being made, we need to put the configurations in it for the front controller, that is my dispatcher servlet. So we need to put all the beans that we have already defined it over here, the namespaces and everything. Now comes the second component, which is handler mapper. So front controller is being prepared in the web.xml. Now we have to write this line of code. I have just written the line of code. I explain you each and every component. Okay, so first we have defined bean id handler mapping. Class is org.springframework.webservlet.handler.bean name URL handler mapping. This class bean name URL handler mapping is the default class provided by SpringMVC framework as a handler mapper to my front controller, that is dispatcher servlet. So we are having multiple handler mapper classes present in the SpringMVC framework, but we are using the bean name URL handler mapping. So this you have to define it. After, what it will do is it will match all the incoming URLs with the bean name present in this file. What do I mean by this? I'll just let you know. Suppose the user hit this URL to me. Next we have the SpringMVC project 1, because this is my application context. So this is the URL. After this, say the user enters hello.html. So user hits this URL. So here, the first of all, whenever user hit this URL, it will go to the web.xml. It goes and checks there, and this is the one. This request will be handled by the dispatcher servlet. So it got to know it's a Spring project. It finds searches for this file, Spring Dispatcher -servlet. It comes over here. It sees that this handler mapping class is present, which is a bean name URL. So this hello.html, it will look for a bean with this name. So it finds it. Now it get to know that for this URL we need to go to which particular model class, that is com.tel.hello. So it goes, now comes the third component. It goes to this com.telcomma.hello. So this I'll explain you what we have written inside this class. So first we are clear with the dispatch front controller and the handler mapper and how it is being mapped with the incoming URL. So this is handler mapping, which is scanning the URL and telling the front controller that this particular component model class you need to call. This I was telling you about now. This front controller gets the URL, goes to handler mapper, gives it back. It tells this model class you need to call. Okay, fine. So now we come to this our model class. This model class job is to prepare the data. Now let's see how do we write this model class. It's a simple Java class. Now you need to extend a base controller class to write a model class in SpringMVC. Here the base controller is abstract controller. There are many base controller classes available in SpringMVC framework, but we are using the abstract controller class. So after extending this class, you have to override its unimplemented methods. So when you override it method, we have a model and view method. We have a handle request internal method of type model and view return type. So this you have override it. Now to prepare the data, what we need to do is we have to just simply write model and view. We have created an instance of model and view class. This is my view name, which I was telling you about this now, that the model classes will give you the data and the view name. So this hello is my view name provided by my model classes. And what is my data over here? I am just writing a simple application. So I just do model.add object. This is my object name and this is my data. So now this data is being added in this particular object name. So I have returned this model with the data this and view name hello. Here you can, instead of doing this, you can create an instance of your service class, call that service class. It will interact with database and give you a list, map, or whatever you want to do, the entire thing over here. After that you get the data, so you just store it in an object of model and then pass it back to the front controller, the data along with the view name. Fine. So this is my model class, which component I was telling you about. This is my model class, data and the view name. This is going back to front controller. Okay. Now it again goes back to Spring Dispatcher servlet where my front controller is there. So it got the view name and the data. Now it goes to the view resolver to see which view I need to call. So for that I have used internal resource view resolver of the SpringMVC framework. So I have written this org.spring framework web servlet. It takes two properties, prefix and the suffix. Prefix is the web INF folder and this suffix is the .jsp file. Now whatever the view name you get from the model, say this was hello. So it goes over to the front controller. It will join it with this. What it will become now? It will be like this. Web INF view name, which you get from here, .jsp. So this is my entire address where my view is being stored. So it goes to the web INF folder and check for the hello.jsp. I have just written it as HTML, so you can rename it. It's hello.jsp. So it got the view. So after this front controller, it interacts with view resolver, it goes to this view. Now in this view I need to take the data which is returned as input and present it in HTML format to the user. So simply I have just written an HTML code over here, and what was the data it was in this message. So in this hello.jsp I have just used to $message. So this will simply display the data in the HTML format to the user. You just have to use the object name for it. And finally this view is being shown to the user. So are you clear? So finally this URL will give me the response in the HTML form for the user or the client. So it's clear. Okay, so in the next tutorial we'll be running this application on Tomcat server, and